Hello and welcome to James Savings Bank. My name is James. How may I help you today?
Hello, I've recently bought this Dragon Lore Orb and I'm very concerned about maximising the value of my investment.
What a beautiful weapon. Of course we can be of service. We specialise in a conservative clientele who prioritise maintaining their assets and waiting for the perfect time to capitalise on their purchases. We believe that some other financial advisors, such as the Yakunda hedge funds, recklessly gamble away their money betting on a big payday. We take the opposite approach.
This sounds perfect to me. What services do you offer?
We like to immediately warn you when your AWP is in danger. You will receive a text message saying, "It's James time." That means it's time to retreat to safety in order to preserve your asset. We recommend returning to your spawn as soon as you receive the message.
That sounds extremely helpful. What happens in the worst case scenario when I lose my orb?
We also have the optional Sanji plan, which de-risks your future AWP purchases by having your teammates co-sign here. They are now legally obliged to contribute to your AWP purchases should you not have the funds yourself.
Wonderful, that answers all my questions. I'm ready to commit.
Marvellous. It's James time!
It's been a week, but we are back now with the Flashpoint 2 playoffs. It will be an 8-team double elimination fiesta here for our $1 million prize pool. We are still trapped here inside Twickenham Stadium in London. And of course, trapped with me are Thorin and Maui Snake. Welcome to our playoffs. Any early predictions on the champion?
You're only trapped if you choose that you wanted to leave. I chose to stay, Monty. Therefore, I'm here of my own volition entirely. And right now, everything's cool for me. But I'll tell you who is trapped, and that is VP in a match against Mad Lions, where if they don't win this particular match, how can anyone think they're going to win the tournament? Like, this is an opponent you're meant to take care of if you're the dark horse team they're meant to be. So I think this is a really nice dark horse matchup where I guarantee one of these two teams is making top 4 at the tournament. Like, I can see at least one going quite fast. I want to see who it's going to be.
Yeah, big expectations for Mad Lions too, coming in as our defending champions here from our inaugural season at Flashpoint. Maui, which of these dark horses do you think has the better chance to go all the way?
I'm going to go with Virtus.pro. Without a doubt, my boy Yakindar, that guy is just on fire. He is looking so sharp as an individual, and I know he had a rough time at Blast, but we'll move past that here. Because
Weird caveat to put in there. Okay, keep going.
Well, the thing is,
talk about that later.
It's almost like he was trying to preempt something.
We'll talk about that later.
Well, I think Virtus.pro really are just the more dominant team. Their individuals are at such a higher level than the Mad Lions players across the board. A-Core probably the one shining star for Mad Lions. I mean, James got a lot of tools to work with here.
All right. We are going to dig into the Blast performances in just a minute, but first up, let's take a look at how we got here at Flashpoint 2 with a gander at our format. It will be our 3 groups, of course, the top and second seeds from each of our groups, alongside 2 lucky winners from our 3rd seed and top place 4th seed of our last chance qualifier are now in that bottom part of the graphic you see there. Playoffs, November 30th through December 6th. 8 teams, double elimination, culminating in our losers and winners final next Sunday here on Flashpoint 2. Now, to recap our group stage, so you can see how these teams qualified for our playoffs, we are going to go group by group right now very briefly to show you which teams you can eagerly anticipate in the playoffs here and which teams were sadly eliminated in our first 2 weeks of competition. From our Midsummer group, Mad Lions and Fnatic dueling multiple times. Fnatic ends up winning our winners final, which puts them as the number 1 seed. Mad Lions as the number 2 seed from this group. Moving on to our next group, we are going to see that the Demolition Men, big, easily running through the winners bracket, did trip up a couple maps against MIBR, but won both the initial match and the rematch in the winners final. MIBR does qualify as the 2nd seed from this group. In our last group of competition, it was OG topping the group, coming out from a surprising initial loss to Genji running through the losers bracket. Virtus.pro ends up in 2nd place. So there you have it. We also have 2 additional teams from our last chance qualifier, who are Envy and Dignitas Vi, who defeated Genji and Forza, and that led to our final 2 playoff teams. I think both of them would be considered upsets almost in that last chance qualifier.
In the context of this tournament, sure. I mean, Gen G did come in with the stand-ins. Realistically now, unsurprisingly, the first games were a flash in the pan. They couldn't maintain that beyond that. I think the Dignitas one was the biggest surprise to me because not only did they look down and out in that match itself, but I think Forza actually took them to the limit. Like, Forza was kind of like a sleeper team that could have done a lot more in this tournament, but they're going to have days where this happens, where you just go out narrowly.
Yeah, I think that Envy was probably a surprise as well.
Yes.
I think they kind of they have so much firepower on that team, but it's been like, how are they going to really put it together? The first two showings for them weren't too impressive, but then they were able to squeak out a win in the end there against Gen G, which I don't think was too surprising, but it was like kind of a coin flip for a lot of us.
Yes.
Well, I think it was interesting because from Envy's perspective, it would have been very embarrassing for them not to win. It was already embarrassing for OG to lose to Gen G with 2 stand-ins, but this Envy team that has been practicing for 2 months here in Europe already, to come out and lose both of their first 2 matches, that's not where you want to be if you want to be on this roster for the long term as an Envy player. So they needed to win that if they wanted to have any hope of staying together as a roster, and I would say probably need to make some waves in the playoffs too if they want to avoid any kind of roster changes or players dropping out of the team, for sure.
Spoiler, that won't be happening.
Yeah, it does seem like a very tall order for Envy, but we don't have to watch them until a little bit later today when they take on Big. But coming up in our first match, we are going to dig into some of the performance from this past week of Mad Lions versus Virtus Pro, because they both did play at Blast. And Mad Lions lost in the first round to Team Liquid, who has recently made their way over to Europe to start competing in the tournaments over on this side of the pond. Now, starting off, what were your takeaways from this loss from Mad Lions? They did take a map. It was a 2-1 loss.
It was actually the map that they took, which was the big bright spot, which is they were willing to pick Overpass into this team. By the way, very interesting implications for this series, potentially. So, one of the things I've liked about Mad Lions is, despite being such a fresh lineup and not even that much actual official play under their belts, they are willing to pick around the map pool. Actually, even when they had Asilian at Flashpoint 1, they made their map pool super narrow and slowly expanded out. This team looks like they're going more the Kerrigan approach. It's like, let's get 5 maps and let's start picking into some of the more weak maps. So, I think the very fact that they had a chance in that series, listen, they were massively outgunned. Like, Team Liquid had much better individual players. Like, it gave them chances at least.
Yeah, I would say that what really struck me about this series was the game plans that Mad Lions brought into both of these, or this match in particular. The Overpass match, you could see that Peacemaker scouted out Liquid. He knew that the B defense was going to be pretty weak and passive, so he just tried hitting B over and over again. 4 of their first gun rounds were actually directed at that B site, but Grim just popped off in a way that was too much for Mad Lions to handle.
And taking a look at Mad Lions, going back to the Overpass point, they are 3-1 in the past few weeks on that map across IEM, Beijing, Blast, and Flashpoint. Is this going to be a point of strength moving forward for Mad Lions, do you think?
Absolutely. I mean, this was a map where, funnily enough, the lineup started out losing on it, but then even one of the losses was an overtime to Na'Vi, who's obviously a pretty good team right now. I think if you look at the teams they've beaten Fnatic, they've beaten Team Liquid, like I say, a close game against Na'Vi, like they're looking pretty good on it. So the fact that it may well be played in this series, like there's a world in which either team potentially could pick this one, or we could get it as a 3rd map. So pretty exciting for this specific matchup.
Yeah, and let's start talking about Virtus Pro, who is also performing at Blast, and they did beat their first round opponent in the CIS matchup versus Team Spirit, and then eventually fell to Furia, who ended up winning that side of the bracket, so no shame there. In fact, both of these teams lost to the eventual finalists in that bracket, so pretty strong performances overall. What do you think about Furia? Because you said earlier, Maui, there was some caveats about Blast with Yakindar, who has to be the star player of this team alongside Jame coming into these Flashpoint playoffs.
Yeah, when looking at the Furia matchup here for Yakinder, I have to say that I don't think Yakinder has ever faced an opponent that's been more aggressive than him, because this guy is always running at his opponents. He's always taking peeks against them, and Furia was somehow actually pushing him back, and that's not something he's used to having to do. So for today's matchup, I don't think there's anybody on Mad Lions that's as aggressive as Yuri or Art is going to be, but I will say that the game plan for Virtus Pro looked really solid here here on this train. It was just that the eventual antics from Furia did catch up to VP. They couldn't handle all of that pressure that was being thrown at them constantly. Yeah,
basically, they found out what people in North America find out, which is like Furia are the CIS team of North America. They play this crazy style, and absolutely that can wreak havoc on any team. So I thought in that particular game, I was underwhelmed by Yakinda. Meanwhile, the superstar type players on Furia, they all delivered. So this scenario for me, it was the Rorschach prison scene. You know, VP was like, haha, you're locked in here with me. No, you're locked in here with me. Whatever. You get where I was going with that?
I do. And so for you guys, when you think about Furia, it sounds like you're saying that they were fighting fire with fire. It was kind of potentially a bad matchup, or they were having a similar play style, but Furia was basically better at it. Is there any team that Virtus.pro is going to face in this bracket that you think could slow them down in the same way?
I mean, I think Fnatic could certainly throw them off. That would be a very interesting matchup. They like to throw a little bit of uncertainty. They're absolutely willing to be aggressive and do crazy moves. I actually think this matchup makes it very interesting, though, because it's not that, like, Furia would always beat them. I actually think that would be a matchup that could go constantly back and forwards. I think the idea is they're playing massively variant styles in terms of, like, high variance. I think this matchup is interesting because Mad Lions is trying to be the stereotypical Danish team with a lot more structure, you know, where people are on the map, you know, when they're going to execute at what time. So it's essentially, it's the execution against that aggression.
Yeah, I think that the game plans here, it's going to be a much different look than Furia versus VP, I'll say that. Like Thorn said, the way that Mad Lions like to play is much more structured, much more team-oriented, and a lot of cogs in a greater system, whereas Furia just throws caution to the wind a lot, and they will just sprint at you, and that's what VP is going to hope to do to Mad Lions. They are going to try to upset their game plan by getting in their faces. Buster and Yakinda are two players I'm definitely going to be looking at to try to upset the Mad Lions game plan.
Is there anything that OG did in that last matchup that we saw against Virtus.pro that you think Mad Lions could potentially learn from today when it comes to facing up against this team?
Let's ask the guy who picked VP. Must have learned some things.
Against OG, I think that VP at times wasn't playing with the same vigor because they already knew that they qualified for the playoffs. So I feel like they were experimenting a little bit more with their playbook, just slightly. I was seeing a couple looks in that game that I wasn't used to seeing from VP. So I think they were trying to branch out, test things out in kind of an official stance. But against Mad Lions, I feel like VP is going to be coming out in full force. They're going to do what's tried and tested. And I think that it's really just up to Mad Lions if they can get going on their T sides, because I think the pressure that VP is going to be exerting against them is going to be so constant. It's going to be just it's going to be so hard for Mad Lions to throw the exec they want to throw when they only have in a 3v3 situation after 20 seconds.
What I like there is the word experimenting, because, yeah, I could see the whole scientist angle, maybe something coming up with that in a minute. Nice segue inadvertently. But I'd also spin it over. I'd go the original, the proto-science, alchemy. What we've got here from the guys on Virtus.pro is James out there. He's looking for that immortality serum, of course, trying to get the perfect balance to never die, ever. Just let it go, mate. It happens to everyone. The idea is how you live. That's all. You haven't started living yet. You can't take the guns with you, mate. You'll be dead one day. We all will. So we're basically looking for that immortality. But as we all know, either you get the gold or you come out, you've got the soot marks all around your face.
All right. To continue off of it, I think the law of equivalent exchange, though, is what's going to be actually Mad Lions undoing. I think that because they need to play in such a system, they're always reeling in A-Core. They're not letting this guy play the way he needs to play if they want to beat a team like VP. They're always just bringing him back. I want to see so much more from A-Core, but because of their style, because of the equivalent exchange, they can't do it. He can't pop off in the way that he needs to for me.
I get it, but this is full Mad Lions Brotherhood now. Like, this isn't just Alchemist anymore, baby. So we're going over to the Superior series.
Maybe James really adheres to the old Egyptian religion where he wants to be preserved forever, and he can take his objects to the afterlife with him as long as they're buried there. He can just enjoy them forever.
There'll definitely be a pussy buried in his tomb.
Damn. Well, on that note, we'll take a quick break, guys. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about the performance of Virtus.pro and Mad Lions in Flashpoint.
After the break.
Mad Lions face off against Virtus.pro.
Only on Flashpoint.